So Mark and I just got done watching Mickey's Christmas Carol. Classic, even more classic, probably the most classic freaking thing. I love to watch that every single Christmas season. It's the OG. It's like it's pinnacle Disney, and just
It honestly
it
still holds up in looks, in feel, in everything. It's a classic for a reason.
it aged remarkably well, and it hits the same almost every time as well. So I mean, it's hard to argue. It really is. I mean, just tell us what it's about, Mark.
Well, as many of you are probably familiar with the story of Ebenezer Scrooge. Now, this one follows Donald's uncle. I forget his. He had a different name, but
Scrooge.
it's just Scrooge.
McDuck. Whatever.
Yeah, Scrooge McDuck, and he is greedy, just a greedy, angry old man. Works his employees to the bone for minimal pay. Gives them a raise every like 3 years. It's fine. And it just starts off with showing us how mean and bad Ebenezer is, or Scrooge is.
Yeah, we have Mickey playing Cratchit, the worker who just I mean I guess he's the main assistant who just can't get anything right. He always just underperforms as far as Scrooge is concerned, but he's actually working really hard all the time. Scrooge doesn't appreciate him, doesn't give him money, blah blah blah, and they just go through this whole thing like these people collecting for the poor show up. He tells them to get lost. His nephew shows up to invite him to Christmas dinner. He tells them to get lost. Mickey asks for a half a day on Christmas, not even the full day, half a day, and he says, "All right, but you only get half a day's pay," making sure he knows that he's disappointed. And it just
disappointed, annoyed with you trying to have a good Christmas spirit and wanting to spend time with your wife and your 3 kids for the holidays.
How
You're terrible.
dare you? It's great stuff.
Could I have a half day?
It's just he's got one piece of coal, and he's just like, "What are you doing with that piece of coal?" He's like, "I was just trying to thaw out the ink, sir. It's just trying to do his job." He says, "Well, you used one last week, so no.
Get back to work."
just
very, very mean.
And so he goes home, goes to bed. Well, before he goes to bed, he starts seeing his old work partner who he got a deal on the funeral, took some money out of that. He admired him because of how well he was able to swindle people and take their money. Played by Goofy, and what's his classic line? The one where he says he'll carry the chains.
I'm sorry, I'm blanking.
Well, he's telling Scrooge about the awful state of the afterlife that he's in because of all his dealings with people that went wrong, and he says, and he's got these big old chains just hanging off him the whole time, and he's just like, it's like if because of what I did, I have to carry these chains for all eternity, maybe even longer. And one of my favorite lines in the movie, and he tells Scrooge that he'll be visited by 3 spirits. And he will,
and your chains will be even heavier than mine.
If he doesn't change his ways, and of course he doesn't listen, doesn't care, decides to go to bed. And then who does he see next?
The first spirit, the spirit of Christmas past, graciously played by Jiminy Cricket. Right after he goes to bed, Jiminy Cricket shows up, starts ringing the little alarm bell he has to get him up and moving, and decides to show him his past and where he kind of started to go wrong.
He has 2 great lines in his little dream phase. He says, "Scrooge, if people were measured by their kindness, you'd be a speck of dust." And and Scrooge is like, being kind doesn't matter. And so he takes him back to when he was younger, take him back where he worked for a very kind, generous person, when he fell in love for the first time with a young woman. And but because he was successful, because he gained a lot of favor with money and business, he started to love money a lot more than anything else, and he pushed everything else away.
Yeah. the woman he fell in love with and that fell in love with him waited for 10 flipping years for him to say yes to marriage, and he foreclosed on her honeymoon house
because it was an hour late for the payment. Seems reasonable.
Totally, very.
And obviously it's showing her heart breaking, and how she hated him and how he lost her forever, when he could have had a happy life with her. And Scrooge is just like, Spirit, please stop showing me this, I can't take this anymore. And the other great line for Jiminy Cricket is, remember, Scrooge, you fashion these memories yourself. And that one hits home, because it's like, if you ever have a bad memory, most of the time you can think back and like, hey man, that was mostly you, especially if they're negative. Like, so that hits home a lot.
Yeah. Hindsight's 20/20, and you can typically see how you fashioned your own terrible memories. My favorite line from the movie, honestly.
Yeah, like they nail that perspective. They nail the process of change for Scrooge. That's why I love this one in particular. They just hit those points and they keep going with it. The next phase is the big old giant who's showing, the Ghost of Christmas Present. And what does he show him?
He decides to show him what life is like for the people around him. The people who have shown him kindness and shown him generosity, even though he has shown absolutely none of that to really anyone since years and years ago.
Ever.
Yeah, really ever. So he decides to show him Ratchet and his family. Cratchit. And his family.
They live a ratchet life. But as they begin, there is like all this really good food lying around, and just really vibrant fruits, and just whole feast. And Scrooge is wondering, what all this is, and like the giant tells him it's the fruit of generosity, which he's denied his fellow man. And so like if your generosity was measured by something like this, what would it look like? Kind of a little self-reflection metaphor there that I thought was pretty cool. But yeah, he goes to see Cratchit, and they're preparing Christmas Eve dinner. The classic old Disney way. They got everything super tiny.
A little canary, about the size of a canary bird, little
feast. Tiny little potatoes, and then like
little. I think it was a pea, actually.
Well, yeah, no, they on the plate they had little potatoes, but and then teeny little vegetables, and of course this is where we enter the most cloying character of all time, the most painfully optimistic little punk, Tiny Tim. This Tiny Tim is the worst one.
Don't let it fool you. It's his favorite character.
No, it's not. Tiny Tim, because Mickey somehow sustaining a wife and 3 children with his dead end stupid job for this old miser. Like, they're all there. They're trying to get food for everyone, and Tiny Tim's on his little crutch. I'm coming, Father. I'm coming. I can't do it.
I hate Tiny Tim as much as I love Tiny Tim for his just disgustingly sweet optimism for his situation.
He gets to the table, they got these tiny little food. Look at all the wonderful things there are to eat. I can't do it. I can't. And they got Mickey cutting this tiny little pea into little sections. And then Tiny Tim offers some food to his dad, Mickey, and it's... Come on. It's too much. It's too much.
It's too sweet. Too rich. Too impossible.
And of course, Scrooge hates to see this. He like, it can't be that bad, but it is that bad. And this is the tipping point, and he's kind of like, well, what's wrong with him? And the Ghost of Christmas Present's like, well, I don't know. It doesn't look good for him in the future, and that's where things kind of flip. There's a bit of a fog, but it's actually tobacco smoke that stirs up, and things kind of switch up on him. Suddenly they're in a cemetery, and this huge specter is just in the smoke with a huge cigar. It's Pete. Pete is the Ghost of Christmas future.
Shows up as just a towering hooded specter who is just ominously silent, standing in the middle of a cemetery. This very ominous, very on point for the feel of just the atmosphere, the feel of the situation right now.
Yeah, and he's like, "Well, what's going on?" And he just points, and it's to Tiny Tim's grave, and it's the saddest moment in almost all of Disney. Mickey's sitting there with the crutch, with the tombstone, and they got the tears, and he's like, putting.
Scrooge asks, "Oh, what's going to happen to Tiny Tim?" It's like, "What happened? Is he okay?" And as he points to the grave, Mickey's just beginning to cry over the death of, I'm pretty sure, his youngest child.
Yes.
It's just a very sad, very, very sad moment.
And he's like, "Well, what happened?" And then you got some people digging another grave. And this is something I guess I didn't quite put together right away, but they're digging the grave, right? And it's eventually, we find out this is Scrooge's grave, and it's like, hang on, not only is Scrooge seeing that Tiny Tim has a grim future, so does he.
He's seeing his own.
He may die soon too because of the way he's been living his life, and it's just like, whoa, like again nailing these points of like internal struggle to promote change for good. Well, and of course, there's this dramatic moment where he almost falls into the grave, and the coffin bursts open, and fire and flames. He almost falls in them, and Pete's just laughing about
Pete
it.
being his terrifying evil self. And I did find that very interesting, that he was honestly more worried about Tiny Tim than himself.
Yeah, that's the scope of the change.
It's a very good heel turn scope of change.
Mm-hmm. And that's like, and again, like I'm saying, this they are showing this pattern in a great arc, because he, it doesn't happen right away. He doesn't immediately acknowledge that things are bad, but it's just this small, painfully innocent person that gets a bad rap, who doesn't deserve one, and he could have done something about it. That's what nails it. That's what hits him right there. And the fact that this blood-curdling greediness of his may kill him. Like, it may end him altogether. So, come on, dude. Are you just... You're going to keep hoarding your wealth so that you'll die soon? Or, and so that other people will die soon, too? When you can do something about it. And that's just where it hits home for him.
There was a little bit of emphasis in the cemetery that I really liked about when the Weasels were digging the grave, and they were talking about the funeral of Ebenezer Scrooge, and how there was, like, no one there. No mourners, no friends, no family, no one. It was just a pitiful, lonely grave.
And he's super rich, so kind of puts things in perspective, right? Just because you're super rich doesn't mean people will like you or love you or care if you died, Makes sense. So, yep. Crazy trip of a dream. Finally wakes up Christmas morning, and he just loses his crap right away. It's just like, oh my gosh, I've got to go give money to people.
And so many things to do, so much cheer to spread.
Yeah, it hit home for him. He decided to pretty much right every wrong he had committed the day before. Gives a ton of money to the people who were soliciting for the indigent and destitute, and runs right into his nephew on the street, almost gets run over by a carriage. It says, hey, you know what? I will show up to Christmas dinner. Make sure you have all the good food waiting for me, because I'm going to be there, and we're going to have a great old time.
Keep it piping hot, because I like it that way.
He's fully caught the spirit of this season, not shy about it, then just buys out a whole toy store, which is oddly open on Christmas. I don't know.
Yeah, that's impressive. They might just be as greedy as Scrooge, honestly.
They have their own story to tell, but that's a different legend. Anyway, totally... He did Mickey dirty on this one, though. He buys a bunch of these toys, comes out, goes to Mickey's house, and decides to be his girl self. As he barges into the house, and what does he do?
He decides to start berating Mickey for taking that half day off, and that he has no choice but to make him his partner.
It's just, there's this build up where he's just being a jerk, and you're like, oh dear. Like, if this actually happened to anyone, this would be
Terrifying.
like, what are you doing? You know, playing the role. The kids obviously see something's up because one of the toys falls out of the bag. He's also got a massive turkey at the bottom. He eventually reveals, hey, I've been a terrible jerk for years, but here you go. You get half my company now. You're gonna be rich, finally. And
filthy rich now.
And thanks for taking all that crap, basically. And Daddy Tim.
God bless us, everyone.
Stupid classic. I can't take it.
I love that
Can't
line.
take it. I'm glad he died.
Wow.
I mean,
You're terrible.
How
can you hate Tiny Tim?
It's a good movie. It's a good movie. I recommend it.
Highly recommend it.
It's like, of all of them, there's like the Grinch. There's like, what? This one's right up there with the Grinch as far as I'm concerned. Like, there are tons of iterations of the Christmas Carol. This one is one of the best, for sure. Absolutely. So watch this one.
Holds up insanely well, and it just every point, everything has a moral, and they just made this very, very good short character arc for Scrooge. It's worth the 20 minutes
of Disney shorts. This is one of their best by far. And what, 1983? Back when they did things right. Jeez. Anyway.
Recommended.
Yes. Merry freaking Christmas.
To one and all.